All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to the second edition of the Bitcoin Beach grants, focusing today on workshops having to do with Bitcoin education for circular economies and also onboarding merchants. So, really excited to have some really great uh, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, doers in the Bitcoin space today. But we'll first start off by just talking about the grant a bit, maybe even answering questions, talking about the grant, how it works, why are we doing it, how does the evaluation work, and just talk a little bit about what's the broader mission, what's the big why here. So I'll introduce first of all Scott Wolf from the Federation of Bitcoin Circular Economies to tell us a little bit about what you guys are up to.
Thanks, Miguel. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Those of you who are joining us live, or if you're watching back the recording of this, thanks for tuning in. Again, my name is Scott Wolf. I'm the coordinator of the Federation of Bitcoin Circular Economies. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. Also up here, my other role is with the Bitcoin Coalition. So we're a sort of broad-ranging organization that got started just this year, as a matter of fact, 2024, to help with adoption and use of Bitcoin across Canada. With the Federation, I work with an advisory group of folks from Bitcoin Beach, Bitcoin Acasi, Praia Bitcoin in Brazil, and our colleagues at Blink at this moment to sort of drive forward the Federation of Bitcoin Circular Economies. The vision of the Federation, the goals are really to carry forward the vision of expanding Bitcoin circular economies around the world and to help connect local circular economies. And so as the grants are awarded and resources are distributed, looking forward to carrying forward some knowledge exchange, connecting groups at different levels of the journey in rolling out local Bitcoin circular economy, and keep this moving forward. Before I say a little bit more about the grants themselves, just about the platform. In our first series of workshops, really quite amazing. We had groups from at least 10 or 15 countries, 3 or 4 continents joining us. In the chat function, you can say hello if you want from where you're joining from. So we can give a shout out to countries that you're joining from. As well, what was I going to say? If you have questions, you can drop them in there and we can create banners. It's a fairly interactive platform. So while we go through the presentations, if you want to start asking questions or if you feel more comfortable doing it that way, drop them in the chat and either Mick or myself will bring them up on screen or ask them for you. Hopefully we have a wide-ranging group of folks joining us. I know, the this isn't necessarily the best time of the day for everyone, but it was really amazing to see that we had people on the literal other side of the world joining us in the wee hours of the morning last time, and maybe that's the same today. So thanks wherever you're joining us from. So about the grants, really want to emphasize that the goal of these grants are to help drive the establishment and the growth of Bitcoin circular economies. Okay, so those are the only applications that are going to receive a favorable review ultimately under the grant process. And so what that means is that in putting forward an application, if you want to do so, you need to make clear what your vision and plan for the Bitcoin circular economy is. You don't necessarily need to have fully established a Bitcoin circular economy at this point. You may be starting from the point of, for instance, you're operating a local meetup. You've been working with some merchants locally to get them to adopt Bitcoin, trying to get people to download wallets and use Bitcoin, etc. And you're trying to figure out how to bring this all together. In your application, we need to see from you a little bit of a detail around the Bitcoin circular economy that you're looking to develop. So a name of some sort, what type of geography you're covering. Are you working in a local town, a state or province, or maybe in some instances you might even be trying to cover an entire country. But we need you to share your vision for the geography that will be covered by the Bitcoin circular economy. And if there are any particular population groups that you are working with or prioritizing, and for whatever reason. So fundamentally, each application needs to come from a Bitcoin circular economy project. Now, Bitcoin circular economies will look different everywhere because local realities are different, the local context and local needs are different. So we expect them to look different one from the other across them. And we're expecting that we'll get some brand new proposed circular economies as well as some already somewhat established circular economies. And we've tried to plan for that in how we intend to review the grants and make awards ultimately. But again, we will not be funding individual projects that are about hosting a meetup, about an educational initiative, about writing a book or producing a video, etc. If that's the exclusive focus of your application, okay? So those sorts of activities, hosting a meetup, etc., all those sorts of activities, if those are what you identify as being the key activities to help move forward your local circular economy project, by all means include them, because you can't do everything, and it's Bitcoin circular economies are a composition of various components: meetups, educational initiatives, merchant onboarding, public visibility through art, etc. So if your focus is on supporting some of those activities as part of the circular economy movement in your local area, of course include them, but please be clear how it is that they connect to the Bitcoin circular economy. Okay, so the key components that we're going to want to see in the applications are really, what is the vision of the circular economy? Again, the area, the geography you are covering, any populations you're focusing on. We're going to want to see some sort of proof of work. What have you done so far locally in terms of increasing education, adoption, merchant onboarding, etc. So anything that you can provide in terms of that proof of work, even if that's really that you've just made the rounds in town and you now have two merchants accepting Bitcoin. Please include those details and share with us what your sort of vision is for growing the Bitcoin circular economy. Um, then we're going to want to see specifically, you know, what activities you would like to have funded through the grant, and a bit of a breakdown of a budget in terms of how you would intend to use the 1 million sats or the 2 million sats, for instance, that you might be applying for. Is it going to be to host, two meetups and to give, each individual, for instance, 250 sats when they download a particular wallet and getting them to use it, etc. So break out the expenses that you are hoping to receive through this. It doesn't need to be budgeted down to the smallest detail, but we want to have a rough, like, you don't need to say that you're gonna purchase 10 bottles of water and two shawarmas or something like that in the application. Just that we're hosting a meetup, an educational session, this is to cover food and so forth. Give us a rough sense just so we know what would be funded. um, and if you could describe for us how this will help you move forward the circular economy, like why what you're funding is a particular pressure point in terms of building out the circular economy and how it will help you to move forward. Again, what we're really looking to do is to help you grow from either 0 to 1 or 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 in terms of the development and growth of the circular economy. So help us get a sense of why this is, a good investment in this effort and how it will drive adoption, use, and, the circularity of Bitcoin use in your local community. I think that covers the main points I wanted to go over. We're really
Awesome.
excited about having applications come in. The deadline for applications is June 19th, so there's still time. We will have the third workshop with speakers on May 29th, And then on June 5th, we're intending to host a Q&A session. So if you're midway through your application process or just getting started, you want to ask questions and help troubleshoot some issues, we'll be available for that. So I
Awesome.
will throw it back over to Mick, and we'll get going.
Thanks so much, Scott. Absolutely. And just to clarify and add to what Scott's saying around the importance of showcasing your vision for the circular economy in your community, your idea, your proposal, your proof of work, the best way to do that is by sharing it on your project on Geyser. So, for example, there are quite a few here that have done incredible proof of work. For example, let's take Bitcoin House Bali, community development, education, circular economy. They've created a very in-depth, thorough history of the purpose of like how the vision, how the spark of the idea came out. By the way, Scott, could you go on mute because I hear the reverberation of my voice?
I'm going to drop off the stage right now.
Awesome, all good. So yeah, so really thinking about explaining what the vision of the project is, and then providing also perks if needed, that people can purchase, and as you can see, just the amount of photos and proof of work involved here, as well as the actual rewards. And even entries, right? Entries are just a really good way to showcase updates, and also the type of, like the link to Twitter, and just the type of work that you are doing, week by week, month by month, to show really the impact that it's having. So this is really, really powerful way to tell your story, while at the same time start receiving contributions. As you can see here, Bitcoin House Bali raised $10,000 just in the last few months. You can also kind of start creating this list of people that follow you, that want your project to be successful and to go live. Even small contributions of 21 sats with the photos of the people contributing helps to kind of cultivate that proof of work through time. And that will really work as in a cumulative effect that it can have as you go. So again, it's through your project that you can tell your story, that you can help start kind of bootstrap your project through community funding, through people that your family, your friends, and of course then also apply for the Geyser grant, or in this case the Bitcoin Beach grant. So hope this makes sense. Again, if you have any questions, let us know. But it's pretty straightforward to kind of create entries, to create rewards, and you just have to be a little bit creative, a little bit thoughtful of like, what can I give back to the community that is contributing towards my project. And yeah, that's a bit about Geyser grants. Maybe I will leave out now a few minutes just if there's any questions. Would be great to hear from anyone. Feel free to leave comments in the private chat, in the comments section. Here we have Hey from Bali, Indonesia, Diana. We were just showcasing you. We have love from Canada, from Sazal, from the Geyser team. And we have people from Argentina, Haiti, Tampa Bay, Uruguay, Dominican Republic, Ghana, and yeah, it's amazing. Just like the sheer global nature of this movement, it's amazing to see in real time. So guys, without further ado, let's kick it off and start talking about education and Bitcoin Circular Economies, the role that education has in welcoming, kind of connecting to the local community, connecting the local community to Bitcoin. And sort of in the past few years, there's been a lot of interesting tools that have emerged to simplify the process of education about what is Bitcoin, what is money. And one of the key pillar organization has been Mi Primer Bitcoin. So here to join us, we have John, CEO of Mi Primer Bitcoin. Great to have you here, John. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Good. How you
Great.
doing?
Fantastic. Great to have you here. So without further ado, I'll leave it to you. I'll give you, 20, 30 minutes to kind of give your, by the way, great shirt. Love it. Thank you for that. Yeah. And so just go ahead, tell us, how did Mi Primer Bitcoin get started? And just, yeah, go for it. And we'll kick it off later with some more questions. So I'll leave
Yeah.
it for you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for building Geyser. Before I get into that, I actually want to just shout out to Geyser because this is such an important project in the space, and every Bitcoiner should be taking advantage of this, right? Like this whole process to apply for a grant is going to help you think through a lot of problems that, like, regardless of whether you get sats or how many sats you get for it, it will be helpful. And to have a platform like Geyser that allows you to pretty easily turn proof of work into, sats, the fuel that will turn that into a reality, is huge, right? Like, this is something that I'm wearing this shirt. I'm wearing this shirt, which is rare for me because I'm very particular about not wearing logos and brands of companies, because me from our Bitcoin, I'll get into this, but me from our Bitcoin, we place a really, really high value on independence and impartiality. And this is an exception because Geyser isn't out there to, tell you how to use Bitcoin a certain way that PS is the way that they receive profit from, right? They're not here to bias you into thinking about Bitcoin a certain way, using Bitcoin a certain way. They're just here to enable, right? And that is rare, and we should champion that every time we see it. So shout out to Geyser. Thanks, Mick. Thanks the whole team there
Thanks so
for
much,
doing
John. I really appreciate it indeed. And really looking forward to the presentation. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And one last thank you to, or I guess two more, Scott at the Federation and Bitcoin Beach for sponsoring this. Like, it's amazing to be part of this community, right? There's just so much cool stuff happening. But yeah, a little bit about me from our Bitcoin, my first Bitcoin. So I'm the founder. This is a Bitcoin education nonprofit. We began in El Salvador in 2021. And now we have, I guess I could say, a presence in about 30 countries around the world. But what we like to say is El Salvador is the focus, the mission is the world. And so, as many of you probably realize, 2021 in El Salvador was a special time and place because that was when the first nation state adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender. So the project was, so to back up a little bit more, the project was conceived as a way to help fix a broken incentive structure that is holding the world back, right? I think that we are on the wrong path. We're heading towards disaster. And a big part of that is because we don't have control of our own lives. We don't have agency in our own lives. And that creates some really negative second and third order effects. If we don't control our money, we don't control our present, we don't control our future, then we're disincentivized to think into the future, to build into the future. And we are incentivized to just follow orders, basically, to just, somebody else is in charge. So I don't know, I'll just do what they say. And they don't have your best interest in mind. So the way to flip that, I think, is actually Bitcoin and Bitcoin education, because that Bitcoin education, when done correctly, is the first step in a journey to reasserting power and sovereignty in your own life, which has really tremendous second and third order effects, right? Like if you control your money, you control your present, you are more incentivized to study, to learn, to start a business, to start a family, to build, to create, right? And that changes everything, right? So I really think that Bitcoin education is hugely important. But I don't want to get too far into the philosophies there, because I know we have to talk about this grant. So Me Premier Bitcoin, we began in 2021 here in El Salvador. This is just a unique moment in human history here, 2021 in El Salvador. So we are dedicated to spreading this, right? El Salvador is the example. We're not trying to change one country, right? We as Bitcoiners, we're trying to change the whole world. We're trying to change each of our communities. So everything that we do is open source. So our flagship product is a Bitcoin Diploma, which is a 10-week program. We have taught it to tens of thousands of students here in El Salvador. We now work with the Ministry of Education. Also, Bitcoin Beach is part of this as well. So they are using a modified version of that. And we are training the teachers to be able to teach Bitcoin in their schools. We've trained 97 so far. The goal is 700 for this year, distributed across the country, and next year, like the whole country. And actually, we have another project with the Ministry of Education, and this time the third partner is Little Hodler, and this is to create educational materials for younger audiences here that will be used in the public school system. But super cool, I believe a world first. It will be open source, right? Everything that we're creating for the Ministry of Education here, for them to use in the school system here, will be open source, so it will be available to anybody in the world. So yeah, that's a little bit about Me Premier Bitcoin. We don't just have the Bitcoin Diploma. We also have other classes. We have intro classes. We're developing business classes focused around mining, but we're just focused on education, right? And many projects have found it useful to use some of these materials. That way they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They could put more of their energy into onboarding merchants or hosting meetups or so many other things, right? We try to make it as easy as possible for them to do the education component. It is, if you go to our website, which is myfirstbitcoin.io or mepremirbitcoin.io, there's a link. You could download the Bitcoin Diploma on our GitHub. You could find it in 20 plus languages that it's been translated to. So very likely this is a resource that could be helpful to your project, whether it's a circular economy or otherwise. So I want to get with that out of the way, what Me Premier Bitcoin is, what we do. I'd like to move on to the main topic here, and then at the end there'll be time for questions, right? But the main topic is, why is Bitcoin education important to circular economies? And that is the relevant topic for people that may be applying to this grant. Education is the base layer, right? Like that will help, that will aid everything else that you do. So, whether it's onboarding merchants, that's a good example. And El Salvador is actually a really good example for this. If you just put emphasis on onboarding merchants, for example, and you forget about the education component, then you might convince them like, hey, you'll get more business, so put a sticker up and use this app. And maybe they won't get as much business as they anticipate. Maybe there'll be some issue with the way that they're accepting Bitcoin, and then they'll stop, right? There are so many businesses here in El Salvador that put that sticker up in 2021 and maybe still have it up. And you go in there now and you ask to pay with Bitcoin, and you get some responses here. like, oh, sorry, the network's down, right? It's like the network is not down. You clearly do not have, a good base layer of education. If you did, then you would understand that. I don't know what the problem is, right? But it's not that the network is down, right? They're misinformed there. And that is a very common thing here in El Salvador, probably more in El Salvador than other places. But I think El Salvador is really important for Bitcoiners everywhere because in a lot of ways, we are living in the future here, right? This is what is happening here in El Salvador, I think will follow in many other places. And a lot of the details will change. There might not be a legal tender law, but in terms of like adoption, in terms of like more merchants accepting, in terms of like more meetups, more activities, all those things, clarity with regulatory compliance and all those things, like El Salvador is pretty literally leading the way there. And what we see here, problems that we see here, we'll probably see in the next place unless we talk about them and unless we solve them now. And lack of education was and is a problem here. I think it is a problem everywhere, right? It's something that we could always improve on. So education isn't sexy, right? It's not, I don't know, it doesn't get the same attention as some things like put in, Bitcoin accepted here sticker in a store. Like that's great. That's super visible. Like people just walk by and they see it. And like to teach someone about Bitcoin in the back of the store or in a class and kind of, outside of the public eye, people aren't walking by and seeing it. It's not as sexy. And I think because of that, it isn't emphasized as much as it should be. But again, it's the base layer. So for other things like say meetups, right? That's probably another thing that circular economies often will do is they'll host meetups. What we try to do here is we try to incorporate education into our meetups. And we find that to be really successful for, our end goal is adoption. Our end goal is to like push adoption forward and pull the future closer. And so an example of that would be tonight, Pizza Day. Happy Pizza Day, everyone. Tonight we're having an event, pizza, right? Here in San Salvador, which is the capital of El Salvador. It's a place called La Clásica, which is pretty well regarded. It wins awards every year. It's regarded as the best or one of the best pizza places in El Salvador. And they will start accepting Bitcoin tonight at the meetup, right? And why? Because this is motivation for a business. Like, hey, we want to have an event and we want to bring a bunch of people to spend their Bitcoin, but you have to accept Bitcoin. We'll send people to train your staff. So, and we basically taught them the Bitcoin diploma so that they're well versed on Bitcoin. So they won't have that issue where the network is down, and that's why they're not accepting payments, right? And another story with meetups and why education is important there. Another business called Honolulu, we had a meetup there, similar sort of thing. They started accepting Bitcoin to host the meetup, which is why we rotate every month to get more businesses involved. They had one that they learned about Bitcoin ahead of time. And then the owner asked, they got a lot more people and a lot more payments than they expected. So they asked the staff, like, hey, does anybody want to get paid in Bitcoin? And everybody raised their hand because they learned about it, right? It wasn't just this like fad, like a bunch of people came to the restaurant one night and spent Bitcoin. They actually learned about it and they wanted Bitcoin. So now they hold Bitcoin. So the staff holds Bitcoin. So we actually have a informal weekly meetup there now, and they have specials if you spend Bitcoin. And it's because of education. The guy, the owner of this restaurant, is like a huge Bitcoin advocate because he put the work in to learn about Bitcoin, right? Like he talks about inflation and the importance of like supply cap and all these things that Bitcoiners love to talk about, because he learned about it, because he took that first step. And I think it's our responsibility to make that first step as easy as possible. As educators, and we're all Bitcoin educators. All Bitcoiners are like micro Bitcoin educators. So I really want to underline how much education will amplify everything else that you do if you're getting started with a circular economy. Everything that you could do, the two examples that I brought up, merchant onboarding and meetups, and everything else, is amplified by education. There are businesses that accept Bitcoin one day, and then the next day they don't, right? That happens all the time. And if that's not happening in your area, it probably will, unless we solve this issue and we onboard merchants with education, not just like onboard them. Okay, great. So that is a pretty well documented phenomenon. Another phenomenon is educated Bitcoiners, right? People that learn about Bitcoin, that actually learn about Bitcoin. I'm not talking about somebody that buys like an ETF stock or whatever, like somebody that actually puts in the work. Maybe they read the Bitcoin diploma, maybe they read the Bitcoin standard, whatever. They put in the work and they learn about Bitcoin. Maybe they have a friend that helps them, and that friend could be you. They don't go back, right? People don't learn about Bitcoin, really grasp it, really understand it, get some Bitcoin, and change their mind. That doesn't happen. That is not something that happens. And that's a testament to the power of education. Because if you are well educated on Bitcoin, that is your best defense against fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? It's like, oh, well, the price is lower today than it was yesterday, so let me get out of this, right? That's somebody that doesn't understand. Not that many people are using Bitcoin in my shop or whatever, so I'm going to get rid of it. That's somebody that doesn't understand that Bitcoin is much deeper than a payment system, right? Like it's actually a way for that business owner to have more control, more power in their own business, in their own life. And if they understand Bitcoin, they're happy however many customers they get. They're not thinking about like, oh, well, how many customers do I get? Like, how often is the network down or things like that? Or, is the price higher or lower than yesterday? What did I don't know, some mainstream media personality say about it on the news today? Like, you're really vulnerable to all of that without education. And all of that will touch everyone, right? Like everyone will be touched by these different things that will put fear into them if they don't if they don't have the knowledge to counter that, to push back against it, to know that's not the most important thing. And education solves that, right? Like, you don't learn about Bitcoin and go back, and that is the most important thing. So I really want to emphasize the importance of education here. I see in the chat that Dusan, who's a Bitcoin educator, might be able to join in a couple of minutes.
Yep. I'll share with them the link. But that's fascinating, the example you provided there, and I love the point around vulnerability. It's a really good point. It's like a place of vulnerability. If you don't know what you have, how important, how valuable Bitcoin is, you're going to be attacked. Is there a service vector?
Yeah.
So I'm curious about the impact so far of like of the education that you guys are providing in terms of creating circular economies in your communities.
I'm sorry. Could you say it
So
one more time?
the impact, if you could see maybe even like allegorically some examples of like how the education you guys are providing is enabling circular economies.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of people. So within Me Premier Bitcoin, we really think of ourselves as a empowerment project, right? It's like Bitcoin education is just like the surface layer, right? Behind that is empowerment. And there are many people that we've experienced here, Salvadorians, that we've taught about Bitcoin and then have gone on to not just accept it in their business, but like really encourage it. So encourage their supplier, their distributor, like other people along that chain to take the course, right? And they're like, hey, take this course, and then they take the course, and then they end up interacting, and maybe they accept Bitcoin for payment, and then they have Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and then they buy some supplies with it. So it's I don't know how we want to define circular economies, like if that would qualify as more like a neighborhood rather than like a city or a town. But on these smaller scales, these like
Yeah,
micro
yeah,
circular economies,
yeah.
it's actually something that we're doing. So we have an open house. We have a house that we use as a office and school, and we have an open house every Tuesday. And at the end of the open house, we just go out into the neighborhood and spend Bitcoin, right? And that's actually been super useful. A lot of businesses that accepted Bitcoin but didn't understand it and didn't really get a lot of like payments, now they're asking like, hey, when can I learn more? I want to take this class. Like they're getting into it more, and there's been a lot more interest just super locally, just near our house, um, for Bitcoin education, because it goes hand in hand, right? Like accepting Bitcoin as payment or using it as payment goes hand in hand with education. People are very prone to issues of trust and uncertainty and fear when it's talking about money, and education solves that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's terrifying. Like we forget as Bitcoiners, we live in our little bubble. It's terrifying to imagine someone who's got no idea and hearing this word and it's about money, and yeah, the gut reaction is no, right? And so education helps. And just to reiterate what you said around what is Bitcoin, implement Bitcoin as well. Just it's amazing to me that in a little in a short course you guys can compress information so well that you can go from like a person like me that spends probably thousands of hours of learning what is money and like unlearning everything I've been taught about that to actually in just a couple of hours or even in 10 hours having a very deep understanding of what is money and why is Bitcoin a very good form of money. So yeah, that's really important. So what have been some of the challenges that you guys have encountered in terms of getting people in and taking that first step towards education, or is it best when it comes organically from their side?
Yeah, it's best when it comes from them, right? Like, we're a little bit, well, we're a lot unique here in El Salvador. So there's tons of inbound demand, right? Like more than we could keep up with. We have, when we launched the Bitcoin diploma, then it's a 10-week program. Um, we set a really ambitious goal to double it every 10 weeks. So double the number of locations that it was taught in, number of students. And that was 2 years ago. And we continue to double it every 10 weeks. And that's on, it could be more. We just like, this is as fast as we could go. Right. So El Salvador is unique because it's legal tender. So there's high interest, but one thing that we try to do is we try to make it as easy as possible. So we have meetups at places that Salvadorians go to. We advertise it in Spanish. We speak in Spanish there, right? We try to make it as welcoming as possible for people who are new to Bitcoin to join. We do it at places that they would go to anyway, right? We've had classes just in parks here on nice days that people could just show up and like, oh, I'm just in the park. Let me learn about Bitcoin here. So we try to make it very accessible, and we try to make it very interactive. So a big part of it is actually just using Bitcoin, right? It's like people have this mental block that you have to be an expert to use Bitcoin. Like you have to have an advanced computer degree or like a high technical knowledge, and you don't, right? There's plenty of apps that are really user friendly, and so we literally put it in their hands, right? It's like, hey, download this wallet. Here, we sent you some sats. Like, did you notice that there's no KYC, right? For demos like this, we're not going to go through a KYC process. So we're going to use a wallet that doesn't have KYC. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Wait, that was super easy. And two, I didn't need to ask permission, which really hits home with people like here in El Salvador. We're close to Nicaragua, we're close to Venezuela, where people have severe restrictions on their money. There's lots of Venezuelans that live here, earn money, and like don't really know how to send it back to Venezuela. Like people actually tape it to their body, they smuggle it across the border. It's a mess. So people intuitively understand once they use it, the power of it, right? Like it's hard to explain that, but it's easy to show it. And we very often try to follow the mantra, show, don't tell. And that we find that very useful.
Amazing. Yeah, well said there. Quick question for Dusan. I see you joined. Are you there? Yay, still on a plane. How's it going, Dusan? Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
And if I may, Nick, if I can jump in with a quick question, because I think it overlaps with John's and perhaps Dusan's presentation as well. I wanted to ask a question just for groups establishing a circular economy or looking to grow their circular economy. Just if one or both of them could maybe touch on the distinction between doing education for primary learners and then, for the purpose of scaling education, training trainers. So those two facets. So the training of Bitcoin trainers and educators, and then the actual education itself. And is there something different? Are there different components to think about? Budget sizes, visions, that sort of thing? Because I think those are both key components of education to build circular economies. All right, I'll drop off.
Dusan is the Bitcoin education training expert here. So I don't know if you want to take this one.
Yeah, I can. Sorry guys, just letting you know that I'm still in the plane. We just landed, so getting out, it might be a little bit messy. But I'm happy I made it here. And John, I love your haircut. I love your new style, man. Perfect. So regarding education, well, that's totally, like I was listening to you, John, and what you have to say. So totally agree with that. And our take, since you already do amazing work for training the people to understand Bitcoin, we felt that there is a need to train new educators. So that's why we started a project called Bitcoin Educators Academy, which we piloted actually in El Salvador and Slovakia. So I was there in January. I loved the atmosphere there and the educators and people from Mid-Premier Bitcoin. They were amazing. So right now, actually, tomorrow I'm going to Hungary to do it, and I see a big demand on that. People want to get into education. The Bitcoiners feel like it's necessary to educate, and we would love to train educators to get soft skills on how to become better in explaining things, handling objections, and anything related to, communicating Bitcoin better. So that's definitely our mission here. and we want to build on everything that John and Midmer Bitcoin is doing. So I think it's very, very complementary.
Fantastic. And just also piggyback on that, maybe just Dusan, if you want to give us, obviously, I guess you've done really well at introducing Bitcoin Educators Academy. Is that the primary way you are supporting education, or is there also something that you might want to say about Amity Age as well?
Yeah, so we as Amity, actually right now, this is Marek, our CTO. This is Gabriel, my co-founder. These are our business partners. So our main mission of education is basically we have a Bitcoin Education Academy on Roatan in Honduras. And we have a benefit of having a jurisdiction where Bitcoin is legal tender as well, just like El Salvador. And also the first jurisdiction when Bitcoin is a unit of account, so you can run your company on Bitcoin. So we are teaching Bitcoin diplomas there on the island, already doing, I think, 6 or 7 parallel graduation right now. So Susel is finishing up 2 classes at the same time. We actually onboarding a new Bitcoin educator, Fidel, that will be continuing Susel's work. So we do a lot of work on the island of Roatan, training merchants to accept Bitcoin, and working closely with kids and schools there. And since I'm from Slovakia, I do a lot of education in Europe, Slovakia, and Czech Republic.
Amazing. And can you tell us then a bit, just then taking it from education to circular economies, what are your thoughts on like, obviously, John did a really good job at explaining the education as a base layer for Bitcoin economies, but and he also mentioned really interestingly that a lot of what he sees is not circular economies per se, but these micro circular economies, which are more like neighborhoods, people, single channels of people connecting to exchange and trade with Bitcoin. What's your experience in Roatan and the other places you've been in terms of the creation of the circular economies?
Yeah, we came to Roatan, and basically there was nobody using Bitcoin there. There were maybe one shop accepting Bitcoin. So we came to a place. Sorry, guys, it's a bit noisy. I'm sorry for that, but I hope you hear me well.
Perfectly fine.
Okay, wonderful. So we really expected that, once we settle shop there, people will be like, "Yay, I want to learn about Bitcoin." But it's not like that. We learned that we need to first of all explain people that Bitcoin is not a scam, that there's many scams connected to Bitcoin. So it required a lot of a slow process, and really being there in person, opening up the center where people can really get when they have time. And it really takes time. It takes time. And initially we were focusing on increasing the number of Bitcoin merchants, which we understood that's not how you measure circular economy. You need to have circularity. We were focusing on merchants, but people were not paying them, because once people understand Bitcoin, they want to keep it first. If they don't earn it, they don't want to spend it, which we cannot force them, Also, store of value is part of functions of money. So to create the real circularity, you need to introduce Bitcoin into the system. So what we are doing in Roatan is basically we are paying all our employees in Bitcoin directly. So all our salaries are pure Bitcoin based. And then our employees have incentive to spend it within the shops to create a circularity. We are even motivating other businesses that accept Bitcoin to either keep it, but on the other hand, also pay part of it to their employees. Right now, Prosper, as the private jurisdiction, will be paying 5% of the salary to employees if they choose to. And if they choose 5% in Bitcoin, they will put another 5% on top of it. So the employees can earn more, but part of it will be in Bitcoin. And again, this is the incentive to really create circularity, not the amount of shops, not the amount of merchants, but really the amount of transactions. And it takes really a long time. I was expecting it will be so much faster, but it's baby steps, continuity, step-by-step process, and really being there, talking to people, how we can help them out, and solving their real problems, not thinking that the problems that we have in our own countries are the same ones, but each community, even on Roatan is small island, but each part of Roatan is different. In one part, there's more expats, in other, more locals. So they have different problems. So we really work hard to understand them and tackle them and really help to create a circularity there.
Amazing. Yeah, good. Thank you for sharing also the challenges. It's just saying that it's not as easy as you imagine. It makes sense, just like with Bitcoin. It's like but then every 4 years something happens, and then there's a lot of talk again about Bitcoin, right? So hopefully we get a bit of that boost soon. Guys, it's been really amazing. I just want to open it up for the last 5 minutes to just questions. If anyone has any questions, but also you guys, Dusan to John or John to Dusan, in terms of your experience of education, circular economies, and how they kind of come together. I feel like I've asked a few questions, but I think I've also got a few more under my sleeve if no one else has any. I think I'm seeing no hands here. I'm seeing Dusan is frozen, so I might go to John here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think, yeah, man, it's been really, really interesting. And in terms of Dusan point of bringing Bitcoin into the system, what are some of the strategies you guys are employing or seeing that work? Because it's hard if you're educating people you're not necessarily paying, right? What are your thoughts in terms of integrating Bitcoin into the system?
Yeah. So just use Bitcoin as much as you can, right? So we have about 20 paid staff here in the country, and we only use Bitcoin. We only accept Bitcoin. We only pay Bitcoin. So we pay salaries in Bitcoin. If we want to print books, like we're only going to work with a print shop that accepts Bitcoin. But our teachers and staff here, because we pay them with Bitcoin, they become like these ambassadors for merchant adoption just naturally, right? Like you don't have to tell them to do it. They just do it on their own because all of their money is now Bitcoin, right? And they have to buy groceries, they have to get gas, they have to do all these things. And they have to do it in Bitcoin now because 100% of their salary is in Bitcoin. So they become these little ambassadors for it. And that starts with, like, I love what Dusan said about, adding a bonus to the salary if they receive a portion of it in Bitcoin. So it's just getting it out there as much as possible. So a lot of the work starts to take care of itself after a certain point, right? So just introducing Bitcoin into the system, as merchants accept Bitcoin and they have Bitcoin, then they're going to start to look for ways to use it, right? So again, back to education. Without education, every single business, this is probably 100% of businesses that accept Bitcoin, that don't understand Bitcoin, immediately convert it to dollars or whatever the local currency is. And then they don't have that like incentive to, like, well, I gotta tell, my supplier about Bitcoin. I gotta do this and that. The shop owners that, for most apps, you could toggle it. You could immediately convert it to dollars or whatever. You could keep 100% Bitcoin. You could do 50-50, whatever. And there is such a high correlation between how well educated the merchant is and how much of the Bitcoin they hold. And the more Bitcoin that they hold, the more they are naturally incentivized to educate others, to spread it, to onboard other merchants that they might work with where they could spend that Bitcoin. So I think there's a positive feedback loop. And again, the base is education, right? That is, in my opinion, that is what everything needs to be built upon.
Amazing. Yeah, well said there, John. There are a few questions here. I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah.
One is asking basically for your favorite tools for onboarding and getting people off zero, and what tools have risen above the ocean for that.
Yeah. So Lightning wallets, easy to use Lightning wallets, right? Have been really useful. Again, it's that show don't tell part of it. Like, to explain the theory of Bitcoin to a pre-coiner doesn't land. It doesn't. I mean, I'm sure there's an exception to that rule, but it basically won't land. The apps to use Bitcoin, specifically Lightning, right? Because you could do it fast, free, non-KYC Lightning wallets do so much for Bitcoin education. That is such a great first step. And you could send someone some sats, right? And like, I'm not saying that you should spend all your money just like sending sats to people. Like, send them 10 sats, send them like a penny. Even just sending them that low amount is another aha moment. It's like, wait, so there's not a minimum here. Like, I could just send any amount. What's the maximum? Oh, there's no maximum. There's no minimum. Like, I'm not used to not having all these restrictions, but it's different to show it. So to be able to show it, so easy to use non-KYC Lightning wallets are fantastic.
I would add to it. Totally agree. We use Blink a lot, and it helps with table sets and like it's super cool. Also, Phoenix right now got so much better as a self custody option. Yeah. And I would even add to it having a way to buy Bitcoin easily. Either building up the peer-to-peer network of Vexlers. There is this app called Vexel, VEXL, which is a app that was developed by Satoshi Labs, the founders of Trezor hardware device. And you should be able in your country to download it. It's a peer-to-peer anonymous marketplace for Bitcoin. Super amazing, very popular in Czech Republic and Slovakia. We want to deploy it in Honduras as well. I believe Salvador would benefit so much of it. And we recently received a Bitcoin Lightning ATM in our academy, and that works beautifully as well. Because having the full experience of people coming to a community center and being able in 10 minutes to buy Bitcoin, set up a wallet, buy Bitcoin, and pay with it for the coffee, that's like a game changing for them. And this concept actually was developed in Czech Republic in Parallel Polis, one of the first Bitcoin or crypto centers ever in 2014. It was the only place in the world that accepted only crypto, nothing else. You couldn't buy a coffee for fiat, only crypto. And the whole idea of the cafeteria was basically for people, like the idea was to have such a good level of coffee that people would be willing to go over the friction of setting up a wallet, buying Bitcoin in the ATM and using it. So in the end, they have the full experience. And giving them this experience is a huge game changer. It really sticks in their heads, and they feel it. They tell their friends about it. And we have people coming with families and friends like, hey, I use this Bitcoin here. Come with me and try it out as well. So for a couple of hundreds of dollars, you can have a Lightning ATM in your circular economy, and having this whole process of really setting up wallet, buying Bitcoin, spending it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I want to piggyback on that quickly. So we have, I think it's available internationally, but there's actually a local startup here, K1, that they have Bitcoin ATMs, Lightning ATMs, and the one that we have in our house only accepts coins, right? So like it's for educational purposes. It's, you have a quarter, you have like 10 cents, and you put it in and you could buy Bitcoin. It's a very easy process. And to incentivize that, we actually have an arcade machine where you could play all these video games, and the cost to play is 21 sats, right? So it's like a marginal cost. It's basically free, but you need Bitcoin, and the ATM's right next to it, right? So like, just put a nickel in there, and then you could play. You could buy like a bottle of water that we have there for 21 sats. Like, it's incentivize people to spend Bitcoin and give them an easy way to obtain it, right? And put them right next to each other. That is like education by doing, right? Learning by doing.
Totally.
Love it. Yeah, let's get these Bitcoin games everywhere, so people pay with sats, and yeah, it's gonna be a process, but we need to start creating tools people can actually use Bitcoin with, not just hodling. Hodling is fantastic, but let's start using Bitcoin for other stuff as well.
I mean, it's pizza day. This is a great day to celebrate actually using Bitcoin, right? We wouldn't be here
Absolutely. By the way, I ordered my pizza. It should be on its way. I might have to eat while we speak later. So just FYI. Look, guys, thank you so much, John. Really appreciate your time, and of course also Dusan. It was so dynamic with you there, with the moving background. It's like thank you for that. Really, thank you for
Guys,
joining. Bitcoin
no, I'm
doesn't
sorry.
stop. Bitcoin education doesn't. No, no, no. That's not your fault at all. So anyway, thank you so much for making it, guys. We're now gonna
Guys,
take.
one more thing I would like
Go
to
for
take
it.
on. And
Last
this was,
things for you guys.
I prepared a presentation in the plane, and I really wish that I could really sit down with the laptop and just go through it, but maybe next time. But one important thing for circular economies that I would love to share, and that's that, guys, when you're building circular economy, please think about the sustainability as well. Because we founded Parallel Polis in 2017 in Slovakia, and I hear myself. Can you can you turn off
It's
the?
Scott. You need to mute.
Okay, so and we based the center, the crypto at the time, crypto center, on volunteers. And sadly, one of the main point of failure after a few years was that we burned out. There was no monetary involvement. There was like it really, we started like 30 people. In the end, we were like 5 people running it, and it failed. It was very sad. We put a super amount of energy into it. Right now, when we're building the Bitcoin Center on Roatan, we first starting to do the mining to make sure we can sustain ourselves for some time. So guys, really, when you're building a circular economy, think about how you can make sure that you can sustain yourself for a long time, either cooperating with miners or getting some sponsors or figuring out how you as a community can help and sustain yourself. And also, we do a lot of free education, but we also do paid education on the island, because I feel after years of education, like there is this saying, if people don't pay, they don't pay attention. So really think about, if people can pay just a little amount, that they will take it seriously. It makes so much difference for them as well, because they treat it completely differently when they pay at least a little amount of it. So really have this mindset of sustainability, because you're going to put so much energy into making sure people understand Bitcoin. It will be very sad if you will not sustain it, if you run into existential problems. So definitely have this in mind and try to figure it out. Don't be afraid to ask for help to other circular economies, to John, how they are solving it. And this is the very, very cornerstone of making sure that we can sustain for years.
Great points,
That's
Dusan.
awesome. Oh,
And
just to
maybe
pop in.
John, just to answer the question that's been raised here.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Bitcoin diploma, the 2023 version, so we try to update it every year. The 2023 version is translated into Italian already, and lots of other languages. That's on our GitHub, which you could find just from our website, myfirstbitcoin.io. The 2024 translations, actually, literally yesterday, we just released the Spanish translation. So I believe English and Spanish are the only ones we have for 2024, but we expect Italian is underway already. We expect a lot more in the next weeks to come out. And if you are interested in helping with that, with translating, then send us a DM on Twitter. And we have a variety of different work groups for people that are working on translating into different languages.
Amazing, guys. Really good job. Thank you so much, John and Dusan.
Yeah,
If
and
you
I
guys
just
are
want to
good,
jump in to say thank you as well to both, and Dusan especially. You're a champ, brother. That was amazing to do this from a plane and a bus. So thanks so much. And we can find a way, if you want to share those slides, or if you really think you'd like to do the presentation, to add that on somehow, so we can connect about that. But thank you so much, both you and John. Thanks so much. I'll drop back.
Thank you guys for inviting us. It was a pleasure. Greetings from Ethiopia. All the best.
enjoy the
Yeah.
injera.
Thank you,
guys.
Thanks.
Thank you guys so much. We'll now call over the next speakers, which are the guys from Bridge to Bitcoin. We've got Christopher, got JD, and we are missing, though, Chris from Bitcoin Berlin. But maybe just to get us started, guys, welcome to the show. It's now really great to have you here. The agenda is to talk about to go from Bitcoin education for circular economies to the role that the role that um, uh, onboarding merchants, and therefore also probably educating merchants to some extent, has towards developing circular economies. And you guys are calling from the UK, which is obviously a really important place to be onboarding the world to Bitcoin. And then we also have a team from El Salvador. Hopefully they'll join us soon. And yeah, so without further ado, I'll leave it to you guys. You got 20 minutes to really talk about what you guys are building, and then the role and what you're doing to develop circular economies in your neighborhood or your area. So thank you guys as well also for joining, first of all. And
thank you, Mick, and thank you for the opportunity for having us on the call.
of course.
Okay, so I guess I'll start by maybe what I normally start with, a very brief introduction with regards to our backgrounds, and then as we do that, we'll sort of our strategy what we do at Bridge to Bitcoin will hopefully become apparent. So hello everyone, my name is Christopher Gordon. I am Bitcoin class of 2017, and I came across Bitcoin essentially as a bit of deal flow that came across my desk, because I did do at one point a little bit of business angel investing, not so much now because the Bitcoin rabbit hole has sucked me deep down into it, so I don't really have time to do that. But it came across my desk as a bit of deal flow, and I instantly thought, oh, this looks amazing, this looks fantastic. And just to put my hands up and to be completely transparent, I was instantly caught out by cryptocurrencies as well. So the promise of 100x returns and 1000x returns distracted me immediately, and I took that traditional horseshoe journey through the space and dipped my toe into cryptocurrencies. Well, not my toe, my foot, my calf, my leg, my thigh, probably waist deep at one point. But thankfully, I made a bit of money, but I lost a lot of money. And thankfully, I came back to my senses. And when I realized that the fundamentals of Bitcoin is where it stacked up. Shortly after that, about 2 years ago now, I met James, or JD, as you see him on the call, and also another chap called Simon. And I met those two essentially through Peter McCormack. And those who don't know Peter McCormack, he's a global Bitcoin podcaster, and he bought a football club in the UK. And this is a non-league football club, so the sort of lower or the lowest divisions of the football tiers in the UK. And shortly after he bought this football club, I went along to go and support him in this new team. And this is before he rebranded the club to what is now known as Real Bedford. And I remember arriving at this, it was an away match, and there must have been about 20 people at this match. So really early days, 10 of whom were Bitcoiners, and 5 of whom were Simon, our other co-founder of Bridge to Bitcoin, and his wife and 3 daughters. So really, really early days. We got chatting, as Bitcoiners do, and we chatted through the match, and we went to the pub afterwards and continued to chat until we got chucked out of the pub. And during these conversations, we realized that we had some common goals, in so much as that we wanted to live on a Bitcoin circular economy. And rather than go away and work in silo in our own jurisdictions to try and onboard merchants to enable us to live in a Bitcoin circular economy, we decided to combine our efforts, and therein Bridge to Bitcoin was formed. I think we've got very complementary skill sets, so James will shortly explain his background. But in Simon's absence, I'll explain what he brings to the table. So Simon is what I call a linchpin of the Bitcoin meetup scene in the UK. So when we first met just over 2 years ago, there were about 10 meetups, Bitcoin meetups in the UK. We're now looking at in the mid-50s. And Simon is very proactive with enabling those who are looking for a meetup in their area to start one up. Now, this is really important from Bridge to Bitcoin's perspective, and it's important for me as well. From my perspective, it's important for two reasons. Meetups, that is. Meetups are good for the soul. As a Bitcoiner, I'm sure you all remember that first time you finally connected in person with Bitcoiners. It's like a weight off your shoulders, isn't it? Because most of us live on the internet for a while, wondering if this is just some crazy Google algorithm that has led us down this path. And because our friends and family think we're all crazy, there's hardly anyone to talk to about it. And are these just bots we're talking to on Twitter, on the internet? And when we finally get to meet people, it's really liberating. It's a fantastic moment. So it's good for the soul, but it's also great for merchant adoption because it gives us hard numbers and data to take to merchants. And also, it connects us with this untapped customer base. And this is the secret sauce of what we do at Bridge to Bitcoin, because we don't actually, contrary to what a lot of people think, a lot of people say, oh, Chris, you orange pill business owners. That's exactly what we don't do. Or they say, oh, can we borrow one of your can we have one of your point of sale machines? We say, no, we don't have any point of sale machines. They're just off the shelf point of sale machines. Anyone can buy one. These are just essentially crappy Android phones with a huge markup. So yeah, we don't make any hardware. We don't make any software. We're essentially just a marketing consultancy. And what we do, and because the solutions that currently exist, any merchant solution that comes to the market globally goes into our basket or our suite of solutions. We're solution agnostic, and those that rise to the top, the UX and the UI are fantastic now. So to put in place a solution for businesses is incredibly easy from our perspective now. Thankfully, that's really great for me because one of my taglines is I'm the least technical person in Bitcoin, and I really am bad at technical stuff. And most business owners are too busy. They're managing stock, they're managing staff to learn about a new tech and this new payment rail. But thankfully, as I say, the UX and the UI, the solutions that come to the market are fantastic. So technically putting in place a solution and physically putting in place a solution is actually really easy now. The secret sauce of what we do is connecting businesses with this untapped customer base. And that's our starting point with businesses. Our starting point is, would you like some extra footfall and some extra revenue come into your business? It's not Bitcoin. So we do not start with, I'm going to teach you about this new hard sound money. It's the best hardest sound money that's ever existed. It's going to change your world. It's going to revolutionize the financial system, and it's going to stop global wars. If we started with that, business owners will just think we're nuts and we're mad and we wouldn't get anywhere. But all businesses have one common pain point, apart from Bridge to Bitcoin. But I'll come back to that. And that common pain point is revenue. They're all looking for extra revenue. And by starting at this pain point, we can open our doors up to any business, that conversation to any business. And it's a very difficult proposition for businesses to turn us down when we say, would you like some extra footfall and some extra revenue? Because what we do is we do this all for free. So James, myself, and Simon, we're volunteers. And we also have volunteers across the UK, because shortly after we started, we had people approach us saying, oh, we'd like to come and work for you. And we said, no, you can't, because we have no money to give you. There's no revenue, but you can become a volunteer as well. You can join us, use our brand, and try and onboard businesses in your local area, and use us as well, and use our expertise. And as I say, James will explain his. So for me, it's a really powerful orange pill, because what we see is we bring business owners to the water, if you like, and they get to see Bitcoin being spent in their business, in their own space, without us having to say it's the hardest, soundest money. So a lot of Bitcoiners, a lot of business owners rather, start off with the position, well, I'm not interested in Bitcoin, but I do want this extra footfall and extra revenue. And we say, that's great, because there are solutions in the market. Well, that's absolutely fine. There are solutions in the market that enable you to flip that Bitcoin at point of sale into your local currency. So that the thing to remember is you continue to invoice in your local currency, because at the moment, Bitcoin is a great medium exchange, but it's not a unit of account. So you continue to invoice in your local currency, whoever walks through the door. If it's a Bitcoiner, you still charge them £10 for 2 pints of beer. If it's a Bitcoiner that comes in, they give you £10 worth of Bitcoin, but the solution can flip that £10 worth of Bitcoin into £10 for the owner. Now, some maxis at this point go, hold on, you're onboarding businesses and they're flipping the Bitcoin straight into fiat. I don't want to partake in that because they're not proper Bitcoiners. Now, what's happening here are a number of things. The first thing that's happening is by business accepting Bitcoin, they're allowing us as in the global Bitcoin community, to move closer to living on a Bitcoin standard. They're adding to the liquidity of the Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. And also what happens is, as I say, they're seeing Bitcoin being used in their own space. We're not orange pilling them. And it's a great example of the utility of Bitcoin. And over time, what happens is they get Bitcoiners come in, and you Bitcoiners, you are a positively mental customer group. You're the best customer group that this customer's ever seen, because the catchment area for Bitcoiners is enormous, absolutely enormous. And then you're the most grateful customers this business owner's seen. You walk in, you go, do you accept Bitcoin? The business owner goes, yeah, I accept Bitcoin. And you go, great, yay, this is amazing. No one does that with US dollars. No one goes into a shop and goes, do you accept US dollars? And the guy behind the till goes, yeah. Yay, you accept you. No one does that. No one does it with pounds, but you do it with Bitcoin. You're really excited. And then you film your transaction, and then you market that business out by posting photos on Twitter or videos, and you're the most grateful customer this business has ever seen. So I think it gets business owners thinking. They think, in these tough economic times, I've got this new customer base. They're the happiest people I've ever seen. They're the most grateful people I've ever seen. And it either makes them go away and research Bitcoin, or they go and ask those Bitcoin customers about Bitcoin, or it's a combination of both. And what happens is, at some point, those business owners who are flipping the Bitcoin into the local currency will approach us at a later date, maybe 3 weeks later, and say, James, Chris, Simon, is there any way we can keep the Bitcoin in the business now? And that's a great example. And that's actually happened with a business that James onboarded. And that's a great example of how it's a soft orange pill, or it's a great Trojan horse, by allowing business owners who are busy enough as it is, managing staff and stock and what have you, they can just see Bitcoin being used without us being evangelistic, if you like. So that's another one of my taglines. Let's normalize, not evangelize Bitcoin. The evangelization will come as a realization when they see it through their own lens, rather than us trying to force a lens or our eyepieces onto other people. But anyway, I could ramble on for hours. So James, I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
Cheers, thanks, Chris. Hi everybody. I'm James. So so my background. Well, so first of all, my age. So I'm the oldest of the three co-founders. So I'm 55, but I'm also the youngest Bitcoiner. So I didn't discover Bitcoin until 2020. Until that time, I spent 20 years working in financial services, and I'm an accountant by profession. I took early retirement in 2020. I was 51 at the time. And I did a research master's degree in finance and accounting to keep me entertained for the first few months of early retirement. And what I actually ended up researching, not that I was expecting it, but it's how the course panned out. I ended up researching Bitcoin and gold. So I finished that at the end of 2020, and I thought, this is really interesting, actually, this Bitcoin stuff. So I'm going to spend some more time in a non-academic way learning about it. So in 2021, I started doing all of the kind of real world learning of listening to podcasts and reading books and articles, and just catching up on all of the stuff that isn't you can't really cite in academic papers, but give you all of the real knowledge. And by the end of 2021, I'd sort of reallocated a reasonable amount of my retirement pension assets into Bitcoin, because I'd realized that the things that I thought were really valuable for the next 40 years might not turn out to be quite as valuable as I thought they would be. And then I thought, okay, so am I done? Have I finished this? Do I just sort of, play golf, watch daytime TV, sit in the garden, get on with the rest of my life? And I thought, well, actually, it's so interesting, this technology, that I'm going to go and see if I can meet some other Bitcoiners maybe, and just get a feel. Maybe there's something that I can get involved with. So yeah, and I've been listening to Pete McCormack's What Bitcoin Did podcast, and so I was aware of what he was doing with Bedford FC as it was. So I popped up to Bedford to watch a match and met Simon, and then I went to the away match the second time, and Chris was there. And so the way I look at it is, I'd worked in finance systems, so I'd always had one leg in finance and one leg in IT in my career, and I'd ended up sort of running finance systems for quite a large sort of financial services firm. And one of the things that I'd learned over that career was that it's always the last mile that's a problem. That last mile might be the integration into the source systems, or it might be the integration into the training and the people using the system, and then out to other systems. It's always the last mile. The bits in the middle usually work really nicely, but what doesn't work so well is that last mile. And for me, the one thing that was bugging me was that I've got the Bitcoin, but why? I don't want this reliance on fiat money as a way out. In other words, every time I want to use my money to purchase goods and services, which is what money's for, I have to convert it to fiat and then go and buy the services. I didn't want that. So for me, it was about completing the last mile of Bitcoin, is about getting that merchant adoption. And so, as Chris said, we kind of, it's called Bitcoin Circular Economy generally in Bitcoin, but it's that kind of completion of what it needs to, of how it needs to perform. So and also having met Simon and Chris, and we agreed that we wanted to do this. We agreed that the meetup scene was really important, as well as a kind of way of being in touch with the market for the merchants. Chris went back to Surrey, where he lives, and set up Surrey Bitcoin Meetup. I went back to Berkshire, Reading in Berkshire in the UK, and set up Berkshire Bitcoiners. Simon had already got his local group up. And so 2 years ago in the UK, we had 10 meetup groups when we met at Bedford 2 years ago. Today, there are 55 meetup groups in the UK. So you can see that kind of the marketplace has dramatically increased and now spans the length and breadth of the UK. There are a couple of gaps, but we're working on that. And that's really critical. And then we've also on social media with Twitter and Telegram and WhatsApp into other groups as well, sort of Bitcoin adjacent groups. We can talk about and publicize the merchants that are accepting Bitcoin. We've got all of the maps now, btcmap.org. We've also got our own map for the UK in Bridge to Bitcoin, and we have an online layer there, because on BTC Map, because of OpenStreetMap's data rules, you can't put online businesses. But so in the UK, we can also deal with online businesses, and we just drop the pin sort of vaguely in the area of where the business is, but it's a layer that says they're online businesses. So these kinds of mechanisms of promoting businesses is really what it's all about. As Chris says, we're not wedded to any particular solution. There are always a number of solutions that we actively promote, and the ones that we choose for a given business depend upon that business's particular circumstances, whether they're online or a physical site or a combination, the level of understanding, or from 0 to 100, or on Bitcoin if there is 100. And so we'll choose how many staff they've got, how many sites they've got. There are all sorts of factors in that business that determine, from our perspective, what we think, what we recommend as the best solution for that business. So yeah, I'll leave it there. That's me.
Thanks, James. I think we've lost Mick.
We lost Mick, right?
Here I am. Amazing. Thank you guys so much. This is a really good introduction, talking about the misconceptions of right, of onboarding merchants, like what it's really like, what it's all about, and then the connection also with the broader kind of communities that you guys are seeing pop up around England, which is really really interesting. So based on the your volunteer work of reaching out to all these different merchants around the country, um, again, two question: is it more like they pull you in? Is it more push or pull? First question, and the second question is: do you see greater longevity or sustainability when these merchants that adopt Bitcoin are um, integrated in some of these either circular economies or meetups, or are they also thriving kind of on their own? If they just accept Bitcoin, people will come naturally, even if they're not part of a meetup or community.
So, with regards to the push or pull question, Mick, so we're in the fortunate position now because we've got a lot of exposure and we've been around for a couple of years now. We get a lot of referrals to us. We get a lot of people sending businesses our way saying, oh, I've spoken to my local pub, coffee shop, whatever it might be, and they're interested in accepting Bitcoin, and they'll pass their details on to us, or vice versa. So we're getting businesses come to us. What we also do, however, and this is really fun as well, we also have a booth at trade shows, so normal trade shows as opposed to Bitcoin conferences. So at hospitality industry trade shows, so pub trade shows or coffee shop or restaurant trade shows, and they're really good fun because they're kind of like a meetup slash speed dating slash orange pilling on steroids, because we pitch up a booth with all our bridge to Bitcoin stuff, and we get business owners, and they're at these trade shows because they're looking for something different. They're looking for something that's going to help their business, so they're already primed, if you like. And we get to speak to business owners and essentially orange pill them in a roundabout way. So we're not directly trying to orange pill them, but we're bringing Bitcoin to them. We're going to them in that regard, but we're in the fortunate position where we're getting a lot of people come to us. I would say, however, that we're still really early. I know it's a cliche in the space. So if there's anyone listening here who does go, well, I'd like to do that because I'm not technical, I'm not a dev, but I think I can go and speak to my local businesses. Bear in mind, we're still really early and it's still a numbers game. So if you look at the adoption curve, I think we're still in that innovator stage. Maybe we're in the early adopter stage, but we're really early at that curve. So what that means is, when we're looking at the psychology of people you're speaking to, and this includes business owners, that adoption curve spreads. That is the same for them. So you'll have some business owners who are at the other end; they're laggards. You'll have some business owners who are late adopters, and some who are the majority. But the point to remember is, if they're in that second half of the bell curve, what you say to them might make sense, and they might get it, but because of their psychology, because of the way they are made up, they're not going to do it until the people before them in the bell curve are doing it. So it's really important to remember that. So it's another way of saying low-hanging fruit. So when you get to a business owner and they're just not interested, they just might not be ready yet. So what we're doing is we're looking for that tiny section of that bell curve, those innovators in society, those innovating, thinking business owners. And you can normally spot them once you met them because they've tried lots of things in their business. They're quite open to trying other things. They're the business owners that pivots, that looks at new products. They try lots of things. So yeah, it's a numbers game. So if you go out knocking on doors, just bear in mind, I think, James, you often say 1 in 30 might say yes. So yeah, bear that in mind if you do go knocking.
Obviously, now we're getting a lot of referrals to us. Those 1 in 30 has kind of been self-filtered already. So a lot of the referrals that we get, it's almost 100% actually, isn't it? By the time we're on a Zoom call with a business, I mean, when was the last time? Actually, it's a question to Chris, but it's interesting that I'm not asked this question. When was the last time we had a call, and bear in mind the last few weeks we've been having like 3 or 4 calls a day with different businesses. We're onboarding them literally live on Zoom, so that they leave and they can now go and start accepting Bitcoin. But when was the last time we had a call on Zoom and the business owner said, well, actually it's not for me? I mean,
I think you're right in terms of we're lucky in terms of there's a filter that comes before they get to us. So yeah, we personally haven't, because the volunteers or other Bitcoiners have already been that
screened
filter.
them out.
Yes. But Mick, with regards to your question about sustainability, so with onboarding businesses, what we often say to business owners is this untapped customer base we're bringing to you is a very new customer base, i.e. it's small, it's tiny. We're really new in the space. Bitcoin is early. So there is this untapped customer base, and they're a great customer base. They will travel miles and miles, more than your normal customers. But there aren't that many of them yet. So it's not going to affect your bottom line that much. And that's really important to remember. If your business is a failing business, it's highly unlikely by accepting Bitcoin, your business is suddenly going to be okay. Your business really needs to stand up on its own legs by itself. And accepting Bitcoin is just going to bring in this additional customer base. And Peter McCormack calls it the cheat code. And just to add to that, yes, accepting Bitcoin is the first step of the cheat code, in so much as you open your doors to this untapped customer base. The next step is looking at your business and looking at the products or the services that you provide, and essentially seeing if you can create a Bitcoin line. Because Bitcoiners love that. If you can add a Bitcoin theme to something, Bitcoiners that's relevant to them, they will love that. So that's kind of the next stage. So yes, I think it's sustainable, Mick, to answer your question, but only if those businesses we're onboarding are sustainable already. Yes, they might accrue a treasury, but if they're hemorrhaging money elsewhere, then it doesn't make sense anyway. So I think it's sustainable. We're seeing a huge growth. I don't like to use the example, but we're seeing a fantastic hockey stick in terms of, James, you often talk about the years when the 15 years, but go on. I'll pass on to you to talk about that, because I don't want to steal your thunder.
Well, I've already done the sort of meetup thing where we were 2 years ago with meetups. It was 10 to 55, but it's a similar thing with merchants. So 2 years ago, Bitcoin was 13 years old, and in the UK we had about 30. That's 30 businesses after 13 years, and today at 15 years, so 2 years later, we've got about 450. Now that's still a small number in absolute terms, but it's a huge move from 30 to 450 between year 13 and year 15. And we think that the reason for this is that we were just lucky with the timing of when we met and started doing this. Happened to be at the same time as there was a Lightning Network, there was enough channel liquidity to make payments possible, and the apps sitting on top of the Lightning Network, so what you could call layer 3, were coming on board to abstract away all of the complexity and the difficulty of interacting with that Lightning Network and creating a quick invoice at the point of sale, making it easy to install, easy to use, some of them not even involving KYC. And it just happened that we were there at the time that the technology made it possible to see this kind of sudden, rapid increase. And my view is that this is just the start, that this increase, because we're constantly seeing new apps, new solutions, new ways of new services or differences in how these apps are produced. So the interface between the user experience and the Lightning Network, and potentially we're expecting, ultimately we're going to see this on other layer 2s, whether they're Fedi Mints or eCash or even Liquid. We're not worried as long as the solution is genuinely open Bitcoin And we don't mind if it's a proprietary solution in some ways. I mean, we'll advise if it's custodial that there's a risk, and the business will then need to keep an eye and make sure that the amount of money that they're holding a custodial Lightning solution doesn't exceed their risk tolerance. And we talk to them about taking it off at the stage that it does into self-custody. And we give them video links to Ben Perry and BTC sessions so that they can educate themselves. And we say, get in touch with us if your balance gets to that point and you don't know what to do. We'll come and have another call with you and go, okay, you need to get a hardware wallet. This is what you do, and then you send it off into self storage. So we're kind of trying to. We think that constant innovation that's going on the existing layer 2s and the future layer 2s that haven't even been talked about, apps that with functionality delivered by people either in an open source or a non-open source way, sitting on top of these things that haven't even been conceived of. Possibly the people who are going to build them are still at college. You know, these things are exploding, right? The number of new solutions that we're having to look at. I mean, our backlog, I mean, the issue we've got probably is that the backlog, our ability to actually have a scope across all of the solutions that are coming is probably getting out of hand. We probably are not going to be able to continue necessarily to have 100% coverage because there's just so much happening. I guess in a similar way to if you were thinking about the internet in the mid-90s, and as the various companies were opening up and the solutions that were coming on board, you would have ended up having to kind of keep limiting your scope or focus because it was just getting too expansive to cover everything anymore. And that's what I think, which is a good thing, because other people will come in and, you know, we support other people in other countries. We share our ideas with similar people with similar ideas in different countries, share our techniques, our knowledge. We're not trying to make ourselves, as Chris said, we have no real revenue stream. Okay. In fact, we have a Geyser project. People can donate to us. We'll tell people that. You know, we've had a couple of awards from Geyser as well over the last couple of years. It's been very helpful. Helps to pay for some of those trade shows that Chris mentioned. So we're not trying to kind of keep our arms around everything at all. What we're trying to do is bring everyone in, both on the Bitcoin side and on obviously the merchant side and the meetup side. So the Bitcoin community, the merchants, and the Bitcoiners themselves, to sort of both as customers but also as people who can help bring the merchants to the door and even learn to replicate what we're doing. So yeah,
I've got a couple of things to add, because we often get common questions or common comments passed when we speak to people about what we do, and for people who try and replicate what we're doing, i.e. try and onboard businesses themselves. And they often say, oh, I'm gonna tell these businesses that I'm going to speak to that they're going to save on fees. And this comes up a lot. So because the fees are less on the Lightning Network, and this is what we advocate for smaller ticket items like coffees and so on. Use the Lightning Network. And they go, yeah, because there are no fees, or there are very low fees on the Lightning Network. So I'm going to go to these business owners. I'm going to say, you're going to save a whole load of fees. And we say, hold on, stop there. You're technically correct. The Lightning Network fees are low, and relatively much lower than the fees that some of these small merchants will be paying on the legacy systems. However, it's important to remember that when you start accepting Bitcoin, excuse me, what you're not doing is you're not asking that business owner to try and then orange pill all their customers. What you're doing by accepting Bitcoin is you're opening your business to this untapped customer base. So those low fees or zero fees that you are paying when Bitcoin customers come to pay on the Lightning Network, that's all on additional revenue that's coming. Your regular normal customers are going to carry on as normal. So they won't actually be saving any fees. What's actually happening is they'll be paying far less fees on these new transactions that'll be coming in. So it's just something to bear in mind when people go and speak to business owners. The point at which you'll see fees being saved will be when we're moving towards a hyper Bitcoinized world, and when we're seeing those normal customers start to go, actually, I'm going to start paying in Bitcoin now. But the positive is, by accepting Bitcoin, what they'll have is hopefully a Bitcoin accepted here sticker on the door or on the till and on their website, or both, or one or the other. And what it does, it normalizes Bitcoin. That's one of my taglines: normalize, don't evangelize Bitcoin. And it's creating a touch point for those normal customers who will hopefully also go, you accept Bitcoin? Oh, okay, so it's a real money. It's real, is it? And the business owners go, oh yeah, we accept it, much like we accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express. And it helps the laggards and the late adopters see it in a normal light. And I think that's a really powerful grassroots movement by having Bitcoin accepted here on every high street. So yeah, something to bear in mind about the fees. I often hear that a lot. And also earlier on, I mentioned these point of sale devices. So a lot of people say, or a lot of business owners say, oh, well, we'll need a new point of sale machine if we can't integrate it into our current system. So we'll have to have our normal point of sale machine for US dollars or British pounds, and then our Bitcoin point of sale machine. And as I said earlier, these are crappy Android phones, in actual fact, with a huge markup. Most business owners have a spare or old smartphone knocking around. So you could just use an old smartphone. So just to show you as an example, should have had that ready. So here is a point of sale machine. Oh, let me get this one. Here is a point of sale machine, and here is my phone. They both do the exact same thing. But as a business owner, you don't need to go and buy one of these. They cost in the UK about £200. Just get an old phone out or an old iPad. Some businesses already have an iPad at the till already. You can just download one of these merchant solutions as an app onto that iPad or onto an old phone and have that by the till. A lot of people then go, oh, well, that doesn't look very smart. My customers are going to think that looks a bit dodgy. Your regular customers are going to carry on paying as normal. It's only your Bitcoiners who are going to pay on this old phone. And your Bitcoiners are used to paying on phones. That's what we do. If a business owner gets one of these out, what normally happens is the Bitcoiner goes, "Ooh, fancy! I wonder how big his stack is." So yeah, we're used to, but there's a bit of kudos to getting an old phone out and paying on that.
It's very Bitcoin to use, reuse, and not throw away. I think.
Exactly.
Definitely.
So yeah, there's virtually no. Well, there can be no capital expenditure required to accept Bitcoin, because you can just use old
almost
machines.
almost every business we've onboarded has had zero capital. They've paid us nothing. They've had zero capital. The only investment they've made in this additional revenue is a couple of hours of their time. And as you say, Chris, what you've done, you've got your metric on that, haven't you?
So I say, as soon as you get a Bitcoin customer walk through the door, because it hasn't cost you anything bar an hour or so with us, and that hour, James said 2 hours, most of the time is normally us just chatting about Bitcoin or chatting about them. As someone said earlier,
you have to understand their business, don't you? You need to understand your customer to make the recommendation.
Yeah. And actually, a business owner said earlier today, when I asked him how the process was for him, he went, "Oh, it was really good. It was really quick. Yeah, it only took about 1% of the call to actually put the system in place, and we just spent the rest of the call just chatting about work, life, kids, family." Where was I? Oh yeah. So it costs you nothing. Use an old iPad and an old phone. We do it for free. The solutions that exist have no subscription. Well, most of the solutions have no subscription costs or sign-up fees or monthly fees. So as soon as you get a Bitcoin customer walk through the door, your ROI, your return on investment is infinity. Now, you try and get a better ROI from any other marketing company that walks through your door. So for us, it's a no-brainer. But unfortunately, coming back to what I said earlier, just looking at the adoption bell curve, the laggards aren't going to do it. Even when we say that, even when we go, you get an ROI of infinity. As soon as you get 1 penny or 1 cent come through the door, that is an ROI. The laggards just won't.
Yeah, Bob's not
because-
doing it yet. Bob's not doing
Yeah.
it. I can't do it till Bob does it because Bob
Exactly.
gives me permission.
Yeah.
That's in their head,
Love it.
basically.
I
Bob
love
lives
that
in their head.
perspective.
Yeah.
Love that perspective. Just 1 hour of initial upfront costs, and then it's like all ROI. Love it.
Yeah.
But guys, you guys have done really fantastic job, and I can I've seen through time how you've tweaked and improved and refined your message to be even more and more aligned to Bitcoin, which is keep it simple, stay humble,
Yeah.
reduce costs, reduce effort to onboarding, make it based on incentives, right? Make it useful and rational for them to be adopting Bitcoin. Take out all the waffle, all the even like the ideology. Just keep to the practical utility of Bitcoin, which is
Exactly.
fantastic. And I think a lot of the circular economies here are going to take away that key message. And here we have people saying great work
Cool.
from
Thank you.
South Africa.
And I completely agree with about keeping it simple. And I just want to reiterate and just expand on that a little bit as well. So as Bitcoiners, we love Bitcoin, don't we? And we want to tell everyone about it and how it works and why it's good and why it's the hardest, soundest money. But when we speak to business owners, we make a really hard conscious effort to take off our Bitcoin hats and put on our business hats. So it's almost a game. We try not to speak about Bitcoin for as long as possible. So for example, I often get people say, right, okay, then I'm going to speak to this business owner and I'm going to set them up with their own node, with their own Lightning node, because they've got to, it's best if, self-sovereign and self-custodial is the gold standard, isn't it? So I'm going to set them up with that. And we go, whoa. Business owners are busy enough as it is. Okay. Do not try and set them up with a node, let alone a Lightning node, where you then have to explain to them about balancing channels. So it'll just be completely over their heads. So we've got to keep it really simple, and that's coming back to I think what John was saying on the first part of the call when he was talking about really easy to use Lightning wallets. So it's the same for us, really easy to use Lightning solutions, which are essentially custodial. I know that's a bit of a bad word in the Bitcoin space, and the maxis hate it, but for me, it's a learning curve. So they might start off with a custodial solution, but over time, like we all have, we move to a self-custodial, self-sovereign solution over time. Hardly anyone I know goes, right, Bitcoin, and then they go straight in with a cold card, Sparrow wallet. Most people start off with something like a wallet of Satoshi, which was mentioned earlier, has a little play with that, see how it works. And eventually over time, we get it and we become more comfortable because it's very easy for us where we are to go, yeah, this is the gold standard, this is where it's at. But I think it's important trying to remember where we all started from and how long it all took us to get to the position we are now. It's the same for business owners. So just go easy on them. I know it's really tempting to go in hard with your Bitcoin maxi heads on and go, right, I want the best, all singing, best self-custodial, self-sovereign solution, but everyone's got to take their own journey and do it in their own time. So
Awesome.
yeah, some of the solutions are custodial, but they move over time towards.
I'd say
Chris,
pragmatism over purity.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
What
Guys,
yeah.
I want we're gonna start wrapping up. So I want from you guys, both of you, to give me 2 minutes of suggestion to someone who's looking to start his own either meetup or even going further into turning a meetup into an actual circular economy of businesses and individuals using Bitcoin for commerce. Give us 2 minutes each to kind of talk about what advice would you give them.
Cool. Great. Cheers, Mick. So yeah, a meetup's a great place to start because, as I said earlier, it's good for the soul and it also creates that customer base. And once you start a meetup, you might find there are some business owners. Normally, that's what happens. There are business owners with that meetup, and you can onboard within the meetup if you like. So if you're interested in starting a meetup, I would suggest you get in contact with our co-founder, Simon. So he's on Twitter as @HODLSolo. at HODLSOLO. So he'll run you through getting set up on Telegram, a Twitter handle. He's even got someone who helps you with a logo for your meetup group. So yeah, I definitely advocate for setting up a meetup group if you haven't got one already, because as I say, that creates a great customer base for you to take to local businesses. And then with regards to onboarding businesses themselves, I'm gonna give a shout out to Jimmy of Swiss Bitcoin Pay. His solution is one of our favorites. So if you haven't come
today,
yes, good point.
Yeah, currently, I would say
yes,
and it is brilliant. I'm not trying to say there's something imminently, but as I said, there's constant innovation in this space.
Yeah, so do check it out. Swiss Bitcoin Pay, Mick, you put it up there as well. And if you do, it's really easy to set up an account. It's like 1 or 2 minutes. It's KYC free. All you need is a Lightning address, like Christopher@walletofsatoshi.com. And you're good to go, and an email address so they can keep in contact with you and so on. So a Lightning address and an email. And if you do that, please use our referral code Bridge2Bitcoin. So that's Bridge, the number 2 Bitcoin, just so Jimmy knows where he where you heard about him from. So yeah, do check that out. It's a great solution. He's got point of sale solutions that you can have on your phone or your iPad, invoicing solution, APIs and plugins for e-commerce, and they flip as well. So they flip to euros, to Swiss francs. We did someone, I think it was today, they looked at those flipping into US dollars, or maybe that was yesterday, and getting a funny look from James. Other solutions.
Was that Swiss? Was they flipping to Swiss?
They were, but we did someone who looked at US dollars. I can't remember who it was now, but they had the slider.
Oh, they did. Yeah, you're right. Yes, they did.
Too many. Other solutions that exist that are popular: Ibex Pay in the Americas. So feel free to check that out. Coin Corner in the UK, they flip into pound sterling. So do check them out. But yeah, Swiss Bitcoin Pay. Awesome. Shout out to Jimmy. I've probably gone over my 2 minutes there, Mick, so I'm gonna be quiet now.
I would just for to put be clear on the T's and C's here. So if you use our referral code, right, it's not just for Jimmy to track. We do also get a revenue share of the fees. Should any businesses ever pay any fees, this is right. So is it 0.18%?
Something like that. So
0.18% of the fees that Jimmy largely doesn't charge, right? So mainly it's 0.18% of nothing, right? But if the business is very successful, in other words, they're turning over more than 100 Swiss francs equivalent per month, then he'll charge 0.21% to the business.
Yeah, not very much here.
Yeah, and then ours is 8% of that 0.21%. Sorry, so 8 times 0.21 is 8% times 0.21% is something like 0.016%. Yeah.
And then if you go over 1,000 fees. Yeah. All right, JD.
We're not doing it for the money. Yeah, we're doing it for the revolution. Totally. Yeah.
So what's advice would you give to someone who's just wanting to start his own circular economy in terms of onboarding merchants?
Go on, James.
Yeah. So I would actually say get in touch with us. Bridge2Bitcoin@gmail.com or DM us at Bridge2Bitcoin on Twitter, and we'll talk. We'll give you a one-on-one. Share our methods, answer any of your questions, put you in touch with anyone else that we may have spoken to in your region or your country. So, because we spoke to people in Canada, in the US, other parts of Europe. We've got an equivalent, a very close guy to us in another business, LaserIce.cards, who's in New Zealand, and he's doing exactly what we're doing in New Zealand. So we've spoken to people in Australia. So we've got people across the world that we're already in touch with who are replicating what we're doing. So we can introduce you. You might be the first. I mean, Chris, quickly, what happened in Madeira? I mean, in Madeira, quickly about the Atlantis conference. This is incredible what happened.
So 30-second example of that. So when Andre Loher announced the Bitcoin Atlantis conference last year, I got in contact with him through Daniel Prince, actually. So shout out to Daniel. And I said to Andre, you're expecting 5,000 attendees at this conference, and you've got 4 businesses in Madeira that accept Bitcoin. And I know those 4 businesses are all connected to you. So essentially, it's just one business. I went, no, they're not. I said, doesn't matter. The point being is that you need more businesses accepting Bitcoin so that when Bitcoin has come, they can live in a Bitcoin circular economy. He went, right, okay then. And I said, right, I'm happy to come over to Madeira and do a workshop to your local businesses, but I don't speak Portuguese. So I need a man on the ground. And he came back to us with a guy called Charlie. He's from Venezuela. I think he just landed in Madeira. And bless him, he took the bull by the horns. I didn't need to go and fly over. We did a Zoom, I think 1 or 2 Zoom calls with him. We shared our strategy, shared the solutions, and he is absolutely flown with what we've shared with him. So he is, I think they're sitting at something like 90 businesses in Madeira now. So they've gone from half a dozen maybe to 90 in the space of I think 9 months, and he's done a real hockey stick with merchant adoption. So yeah, do get in contact. Hopefully you can have an effect like Charlie in Madeira. Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, the thing is, he was 100% on it, and we are as well. Chris and I are in a fortunate position. We can spend a large amount of our time doing this. Charlie was given full time. You might have a regular job, which is understandable. Most people have to earn regular job. But any time you can spend doing it is obviously positive.
That's fantastic advice. You guys have accumulated so much knowledge and learning and know-how that it's just about cloning yourself into others, right? And sharing that knowledge. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But guys, I do have another call coming up, unfortunately. But I have to really thank you so much for this. It's been really, really, really insightful. The guys loved it. Lots of really good comments. And just always really, really great to see the progress you're making, really. So thanks so much, Chris and JD. If there's nothing else, let's call it and keep doing good work.
Cool.
Yeah, speak to you soon.
Cheers, mate. Keep it up
Speak
too.
soon. Bye, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.